What is the value of death in anime, and how do shows do this well or badly within it? I'm here with my mate Schmidt, or Evan, or whatever.
Hello?
Hello. And I'm going to say straight away that this video may contain spoilers. In fact, it not may contain spoilers.
Major spoilers.
Will contain huge spoilers for a few shows. We're going to be talking about how some shows do death well, mainly stuff like Full Metal Alchemist, to shows that do it kind of not so well, such as Akame Ga Kill, to some shows that it's kind of argued whether they do it well or not, and that would be shonen shows that have, hundreds upon hundreds of episodes, or even ones that have less episodes, like Attack on Titan and stuff. We've got 3 main reasons to die. Right? Evan, do you want to...
Yeah,
Get right
so right. So, death with development. So an example of this would be in Full Metal Alchemist with Maze Hughes. He dies to continue the plot, but it's executed in a way that he's developed as a character before his death. There is value to his death, and that he isn't just a plot device. He is a character. He is a solid person.
Yeah, and I think that's what the main thing about it is the fact that this character could exist without dying, but he does die to develop the plot. But when he dies, you don't feel like you've been cheated out of a character. It doesn't feel like the show has just done a cheap shot and been like, oh shit, oh yeah, this character only existed to die. It actually feels like this character was fully developed, that, they had permission for him to die to develop the plot without making his death exclusively all his purpose.
Exactly, yeah, and I think the way that that Full Metal Alchemist did this, and they did it well, is the fact that they introduced characters that were part of Macy's life. Before his death, they were mentioned. His wife was actually the person shooting him. Obviously, it was Envy, but it was the way that it was shot and the way it was portrayed, and as well how Macy's apologized to his family and especially his daughter for dying. Yeah,
and I think this is really clever because that it really gets the audience attached to the character, and it makes it seem like this character is has a fully developed, he dies so early on. In terms of the story, I mean, I know it's not that early on, but it's early on compared to the fact that it's a 64 episode show.
He dies at the point where the show starts to kick off. That's the reason why they put him at that point, because that's when shit starts in the show.
He already has enough development that it doesn't feel like you've been cheated.
Exactly, yeah.
On the other hand, we have shows such as Akame Ga Kill. Now, these characters almost feel like they're dying for the sake of dying. But there is one character which does die to develop the plot. And that would be Bro from Akame Ga Kill. The problem is the fact that despite his death developing the plot, it is almost like that is all he's used for. His character exists to die, but then once he does die, it feels like it was a cheap shot that the show takes on you. It feels like, wow, okay, so this character was pretty cool. I did like this character, but he didn't get nearly enough development. He didn't get anything to make it feel like he was anything more than just a character used for dying.
Exactly, yeah. And my point of view on this, he did die with the smallest amount of development. I think the creators of Akame Ga Kill tried to make the viewers attached to Bro, mainly because of the whole the general once he got introduced to the show, the way that Bro reacted to seeing him and evidently being killed by him in the show. So it's kind of
and the point is more that it's just not executed very well.
It isn't. That is, very true.
And the thing is the fact that Bro had full potential to be an amazingly developed character, and they could have still used his death to develop the plot. They could have done that. But if they'd have just given him a bit more screen time, a bit more time, and actually made it so Tatsumi could do something without Bro dying, it would be a much better show, and it would be a much more like, because the character's already likable. That's the thing. Bro is already likable. In fact, he's arguably the most likable out of the entire cast, which is why it's a shame for him to die in such an unsatisfying way, in such a way where it feels like that's all he was meant to do. And that's such a shame, because that's a waste of one of the best characters in the entire series. It doesn't do character writing very well, but that was one of the characters that it actually did all right, but then they just fucked it up, which is the problem.
With Akame Ga Kill, I think you can simply put it into 4 words. They have cool characters, but it's poor execution.
Exactly.
Quite frankly, it's with all their characters there that they have the chance to get developed. The only 2 characters that get slightly developed are the purple-haired lady. I can't remember her name at this point. The scissor one.
Yeah.
She dies to further the plot, and she gets some sort of backstory, but it isn't like a huge one. It's the same with Bro. It's not a huge one, but obviously those are the 2 characters that further the plot. On the other hand, the death for the sake of dying is all of the other supporting characters.
Yeah, well, so this is the theoretical second way that anime does death, and it is definitely the worst way of dying, which is just death for the sake of dying. These characters die to make the show edgy, if you know what I mean, which is the main problem with Akame Ga Kill. The writers clearly just wanted the show to be fucking edgy. And it's almost as if the characters have such little value that it's like they might as well have just not existed in the first place, even if they are pretty cool.
I think we should move on to the shonen aspect of deaths. Do you want me to segue into that?
Sure, go for it. The theoretical third way that anime does death.
Death for an impact on the audience. This is done within a lot of shonen shows, whether it be bad or good. The reason why they put it in is because the author and writers, they know that the audience have been watching the show for so long that the death of the anime is such a shock to them, and it will leave like an emotional impact on the audience, and that gives them more and more views. An example of this would be Jiraiya from Naruto. He was introduced back in the original episode of Naruto. I can't remember exactly, but it was probably around 50 to maybe 80, where he is introduced as a sort of mentor. And as Jiraiya is progressing through, and with Naruto, and obviously Naruto becomes more powerful throughout the show, it's as though you are Naruto and you are experiencing Jiraiya's death yourself.
Yeah.
And it's downright amazing.
Yeah, it's done pretty well, but that's purely for the fact that these shows have lasted so long. But smaller shows, 24 episode, 12 episode shows can't afford to do this because they don't have hundreds upon hundreds of episodes to spare. But these shonen shows that do can do it well. And I think what it comes down to is it depends. This whole death for an impact on audience kind of way of doing death is all dependent on whether you like the show. Yeah. If you don't like Naruto, you won't give a fuck about who dies in it. You know what I mean? Because I personally don't. But I can respect the fact that people do give a fuck because they've been watching it for so long. I can respect that, and I can respect the way that the writers do it, because it's not they've given these characters so much screen time.
It's not cheap.
Yeah, that it's not cheap. And other impacts on audience are characters that kind of die at the end of shows. That's a pretty big impact, and it's kind of what rounds the show off, if you know what I mean. If someone dies at the end, it can have a much better kind of satisfactory ending than if they didn't. A lot of people may complain about it, but it does kind of make the ending better. But it's all dependent on whether you like the show, this kind of death. It's all dependent on whether the characters have had enough screen time, whether you've paid attention to all of the episodes, So yeah, this kind of death is subjective, I'd say. It depends on who you are, whether you like the death or not. But most of the time, it's done well by the authors, and that's what matters, really. Moving on, I've got it written down here as the fourth kind of death. would be as a plot device.
Oh yeah, so basically the whole story is based around death. So an example of this would either be Another or Death Note. They're sort of like a horror thriller sort of thing where the characters aren't fully developed, but the reason they die is because it's an integral part of the story. And giving the example Death Note, Light is literally writing names to kill people, and these people are literally pure side characters. The only thing they've been given is a name and a face.
Yeah, so the difference between this and the first point of Death to develop the plot is the fact that this one is slightly different because it is the entire plot device. Like, in Another, the characters they get a little bit of backstory, but they don't get much. But the fact that they die doesn't feel cheap because it is literally what the whole story is based around. Exactly. If these deaths didn't occur, then what would be the point in following the story? It wouldn't be a mystery, if you know what I mean. This specific one is dependent on whether just the anime is good or not. I think it's pretty hard to argue that Death Note is bad, and therefore the deaths in it are executed fine. It's fine. It's not like it's good. It's not like it's bad that they die. It's not like much emotional response is actually created there. It's just they die. And that is just how the story evolves around it. And I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. I feel that with Death Note, the end of Death Notes is signified through L's death, not Light's death, because obviously Light dies at the end of Death Note. But a lot of people, including me actually, finished Death Note without watching till the end, because they thought that because L died, that was the end of the anime. Mainly because there isn't... I can understand that there is more story, but in my perspective, there is little to no other story, other than the fact that you know that eventually Light meets his fate and actually hits the dust.
Yeah, I think there is a reason to watch the rest of it, but L's death is certainly different from the other deaths in Death Note. Because the thing is with the other deaths is all these side characters die because that is what the story is. And that's perfectly fine.
It's a huge part of the story, the fact that L dies towards the end.
And the fact that they execute it well. Had they execute it badly, I would probably hate the show. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. That's our 4 ways of dying. So to summarise, first way is death to develop plot. That's Maze Hughes and kind of Bro and stuff. And those are 2 examples of how it's done well and how it's done kind of badly. The second way is death for the sake of dying. This is pretty much always bad. The third way is death for an impact on audience. This is subjective on whether you like the show or not, basically. And the fourth death is when it's kind of as a plot device, shows like Another and Death Note, when these side characters die because that is what the story is based around. And it's difficult to do well. It really is difficult to do well. But it's huge respect for me when a show does it well, and a huge disrespect when they don't do it well, because it takes advantage of death, and it really it makes it seem like it's an insignificant thing, when actually this plot device should be used extremely significantly, because it is. There is nothing more significant than dying. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Anything else to say?
No, I think that's about it. I think we've covered most of the things.
All right.
Yes. The only thing that I could quickly say is anime is a huge. Death is used it's used within most anime, and it's like James said, whether it's done well or not, it can differ between the show being really good or being really bad.
Yeah, it is just integral. So go ahead and tell us what your thoughts of the value of death in anime are, and I'll try to read them out next episode. Alright, so it's that time of the episode where we pick out a comment and, have a little discussion about it, see what we think. That anime snob says, you think Steins Gate made it popular to try Madoka Magica, and time travel has been used before in lots of shows as a reset button at the very end too. Now, what I have to say to this is the fact that, yeah, I think Madoka Magica it did kind of jumpstart the genre, kind of, but I don't think it jumpstarted it quite as much as Steins Gate did, because these shows all use, as you said, this kind of reset button to do it. Shows like Steins Gate is different because the time travel is what the show is all based around. It is the premise of the show. Okay, so Madoka Magica, it may be what the story is based around, but it isn't actually what the main show's premise is, if you know what I mean. When you watch Madoka Magica for the first 10 episodes, time travel isn't involved at all when you watch it, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of two different ways. They're both using the plot device, but they're using it in completely different ways, in my opinion. So yeah, it really depends on what you're watching. I would still say that the way Steins Gate uses it is kind of what jump-started it in that sense. Madoka Magica is completely different, but does use it amazingly. I will give it that. I love Madoka Magica, and I love Steins Gate, but the way that they use the concept of time travel is kind of completely different. But yeah, thanks for your comments. Until next time, I'll catch you then. Later.